Known throughout the universe for their unparalleled technical supremacy, the galactic empires had little they were interested in Earth because they saw it as a backwater planet with no strategic value, but that impression was altered when a faint, hitherto unheard of energy signature pulsed from the Earth's surface. But distinct from anything documented in their vast galactic archives, the empires came together to form an uncommon alliance, and their coalition of fleets, each loaded with devastating firepower, was sent to look at this enigmatic source of power and, if needed, claim it. Their superiors were sure, because of Earth's lack of advanced technology, humanity did not threaten them. When the fleets descended Earth, the skies were crowded with enormous alien vessels, blotting out the sun. In several places, panic engulfed the world as humanity rushed to governments in response. Cities were in disarray as they were ready for earthly within hours. Communications broke down because the conflicts were not prepared for such a powerful alien force. And the invaders lost no time in causing bewilderment and dread throughout the world. They used targeted blows as a show of might in their first phase, which involved suppressing any resistance. Terrible explosions that destroyed whole city blocks, even if instead of causing extensive destruction, the invaders chose to keep the planet's population under control. Resource extraction, not extinction, was the aim. Humanity's resistance, while valiant, was launched. Military forces that were utterly ineffectual counterattacks using their most cutting-edge weaponry, but despite their best efforts, the alien spacecraft were hardly touched. Tanks and fighters were rendered obsolete, and attempts to fight the invaders on the ground were met with devastating losses. The technology of the coalition fleets, developed during centuries of interplanetary warfare, was considerably superior to that of humanity. Never thought possible as the world descended into turmoil, focus shifted to the center of the electromagnetic pulse that had attracted the invaders came from an old site, Barry, located in a far-off, little area of the world. The site had long been regarded as unimportant and worthless beyond hazy historical curiosity, but the energy sign signature coming from its depths revealed something more. This location appeared to be not only was it old, but it was old before the written history of humanity. When scientists arrived at the site, they were shocked to find that the ruins defied study. The visible engravings included complex designs and were made of materials that didn't correspond with Earth's known geology. Attempts to decipher its meaning using completely unintelligible symbols and language resulted in maddening dead ends. Despite this, one thing was evident: regardless of the state of the coalition's most sophisticated artificial intelligence systems, was incredibly strong and completely alien, even to the galactic empires that lay asleep beneath the ruins. The leadership brushed the ruins aside, supposing them to be just another curiosity, anomaly, a relic of a long-gone civilization. Their attention turned to making sure that Earth was completely pacified. However, their experts demanded more investigation, so the authorities grudgingly approved a small amount of excavation when the ruins were examined, odd things started to happen. The ground shook sometimes, but there was no tectonic activity was seen, and inexplicable energy spikes led to brief malfunctions in coalition machinery. Even the most sophisticated ship's shielding systems abruptly failed when hovering above the location. These phenomena were written off as natural occurrences, although among people seeing from the shadows, local populations were becoming increasingly conscious of the local legend, started to hint that something was stirring up the coalition. But the scientists chose to disregard the warnings and carried on with their excavation, removing layers of the remains to expose a system of tunnels that they found a chamber in the middle of this labyrinth that was miles below the surface and unlike anything else saw previously. It was vastly lit by a dim, pulsating radiance emanating from a massive item buried in the ground, its surface appearing both biological and metallic and changing constantly as despite being alive. The coalition was unaware that their manipulation had started a chain reaction as they dug inside the object for additional research. The dim glow brightened and the pulsations increased, transforming the chamber in a instruments for blinding light showed an exponential increase in energy levels. Surpassing the galaxy's known power source above ground, the repercussions were instantly caused by the Earth surrounding the site cracking open, forming enormous cracks. Deafening roar echoed over the area, more like a tremor than a sound. For the first time, dread began to creep in, and coalition leaders ordered their scientific teams to evacuate immediately. In their conceit, the coalition leaders thought they could take advantage of the devastation without consequently. They were unaware that the energy sign was not a dormant relic that was just waiting to be utilized as a warning. The long-standing systems, now fully operational, started to transform the surrounding area. What was once a peaceful, unobtrusive scene became into a scene of apocalyptic chaos, with storm clouds gathering abnormally quickly. Blotting out the sun, lightning strikes quickly, creating fire trails the invader spacecraft hovering too close to the Earth were hit with. Terrible force that sent multiple objects plummeting to the ground in smoke and fire plumes. In spite of the increasing coalition forces underestimated the extent of the mayhem and reacted slowly. The danger sent reinforcements because they thought their superior technology would help them regain control. Protect the location, despite their ground forces' reports of being overpowered by the drastic environmental changes. For news of the enigmatic events that occurred among the ruins was both horrifying and somehow promising for humanity. Grew quickly, making its way to even the world's most isolated regions. Among the terror and devastation, rumors of an old guardian started to emerge, and it seems that certain nations' ancient legends were re-examined and parallels were made. Too coincidence to overlook the possibility that anything that could challenge even the powerful could exist on Earth itself. Commanders of the coalition, now in a grave situation, ordered a full-scale bombardment of the galactic empires. Massive firepower was unleashed by orbiting guns directed at the location, yet as the dust settled, the throbbing energy not only continued but had increased while the ruins remained intact, more powerfully enclosing the region in an impassable barrier. During this time, the coalition's trust started to decline as reports of odd occurrences started to come in from all across the world. Once localized, tremors have spread around the world, and magnetic fields changed. As atmospheric disturbances increased, they severely disrupted navigation systems. Growing violence makes it impossible for even the most sophisticated technologies to function without problems. According to the coalition, had inadvertently set off something much bigger than they could have imagined. What they had awoken wasn't just an artifact from ancient Earth, serving as the last line of defense for the planet. Just starting to stir, the ground shuddered more violently as even though the globe was reacting to the disruption, a slight energy signature suddenly increased into a steady, strong pulse. And this change wasn't coincidental. It was purposefully set off by the Galactic Coalition's intrusive activities. Deep beneath the surface, something long dormant started to stir in response to the disruption with deliberate intent. Coalition scientists were too focused on their findings to see the importance of what they were doing. Sophisticated gadgets that were once dependable began to malfunction. In order to examine geological formations and energy sources, equipment would provide inconsistent and unpredictable findings. Mysteriously shut down, leaving the researchers more and more irritated with what they were unable to comprehend, that they had triggered anything and were no longer dealing with a passive situation. Sensing something intentionally as the energy pulses became more intense started interfering with the coalition fleet's larger operations. Ships in orbit reported unexpected power outages. Commanders discounted the disturbances as technical since they were caused by navigational errors and shielding problems. Errors, but the pattern was unquestionably the most advanced in the coalition. Technologies intended to rule entire star systems were failing in the face of an unidentified force. The leadership began to become uneasy when it became apparent that their technology was weak, but they would not accept the extent of the danger, as the structure beneath the ruins is now completely operational. Started to disclose the actual nature of what had seemed to be a solitary relic in reality as a component of a global network of energy conduits hidden from millennia started to illuminate over great distances, creating a network of luminous lines that could be seen from orbit. These lines, which resembled veins in the planet itself, followed a specific pattern and weren't arbitrary, directing tremendous energy into the awakening. The system's fundamental source was not a machine in the traditional sense when the entity started to take shape. Was it a living creature in the sense that the Galactic Coalition defined life? Or was it a creation of the oldest civilization on Earth, created with the sole intent of defending the Earth against existential dangers, a civilization that has long since vanished? They had left behind a guardian because people from past had anticipated the threats that may one day arise from beyond the stars. When everything else failed, the force bonded to the planet itself could defend it. Although the awakening process was gradual and systematic, as if the creature was evaluating the circumstances before they completely emerged, the energy patterns became increasingly intricate, emitting a frequency that interfered with the coalition's efforts to communicate with their command ships, which led to panic spread across the lower ranks due to static or fragmentary transmissions. As the scale of despite these indications, the leaders of the coalition stuck to their supremacy posture, revealing the unknown. Ground forces were instructed to expedite the excavation and seize whatever was causing the disruptions. Pushed farther into the ruins with the galaxy's most sophisticated weaponry, with the goal of neutralizing the energy source and manage what they came across, but they disregarded anything anticipations. The temperature became more hostile as the soldiers entered the caverns. Varied dramatically, and their existence appeared to cause the walls to pulse. Advanced scanning sections of the tunnels that seemed to shift or collapse were not mapped by the equipment. All soldiers claimed to have heard low-frequency noises that reverberated in their chests, giving them a feeling of, as they went farther, it became increasingly evident that this was not a building designed for investigation, but rather a defense system. The coalition's soldiers tried to overcome the obstacles they faced by using physical force. Energy drills, explosives, and even plasma-based weapons were used, but the tunnels stayed intact because the materials were resistant to even the most sophisticated technologies, including molecular-level disintegration, which was the first concrete indication that they were up against a power that was much greater than themselves. Earth, the energy signature hit a crucial point, and the pulses are currently coordinated with the planet's illuminating network produced a resonance that had an impact on the biosphere as a whole. Massive tidal shifts in the ocean's response caused the atmosphere to get charged with static electricity, which in turn caused erratic weather patterns. These modifications weren't coincidental, rather, they were a component of the entity's awakening. A procedure that the coalition scientists continued to gather electricity from all over the world. Having difficulty analyzing the data, they started to realize how big of a mistake they had made. It was a planetary defense that they had disregarded as an antique artifact. Nevertheless, it was too late when they communicated their results. As the last stage of awakening drew closer to the ground, the fleet commanders realized that the process was irrevocable. Ruins started to split apart, generating energy bursts that ruined everything around them, including coalition vehicles and machinery, and their systems were destroyed by troops on the ground fled in confusion, as their trust was destroyed by the powerful electromagnetic fields. For the first time, the coalition encountered a foe that was too powerful for them to defeat with technology or sheer numbers. When the fully active point of the awakening creature released a flash of light, all sensors were momentarily blinded. When the light faded, something that had never been seen in the galaxy appeared. The tall, glowing thing was not a physical being in the conventional sense. Its presence was an expression of the planet's fundamental energy, molded by the purposes of its creators. It was overpowering in scope and force. Radiating the coalition's commanders responded instantly, ordering a full-scale attack with their most potent orbital weaponry. Cannons fired precise strikes at the entity, releasing devastating energy that could destroy entire cities. But the entity was unaffected as the dust cleared it absorbed in the face of this. The attack's form seemed to mock their efforts by glimmering with a brilliance. Eventually, the coalition's haughtiness started to erode, despite all of their military and technological achievements. Despite their inability to comprehend the entity's principles, they were helpless to oppose the force. Activation had radically altered the power dynamics on Earth, which was formerly viewed as this was a pivotal time in the battle, as the once vulnerable target had transformed into an impenetrable fortress. For the first time in its history, the coalition had to face the fact that it had lost. Despite being quiet, the entity used its behaviors to convey its meaning. Eager to compromise or engage in dialogue, its goal was obvious: to safeguard the planet at all costs, irrespective of the capabilities or motives of the invaders. Now in disarray, the coalition's fleet started to leave the nearby vicinity. Their commanders, who had once been so sure of their dominance, had to face the possibility that they had released an uncontrollable power, leaving the Galactic Coalition reeling from the Earth's awakened guardians unexpectedly gathered to unleash a full-scale counteroffensive. Their fleets, which were gathered from the galaxy's most developed civilizations, were built to subdue entire stars systems, preparing for a protracted battle and using their most deadly technology to eliminate they misjudged the character of their enemy, the Guardian, a planetary power that had resisted their initial attack. Currently fully operational, it was unrestricted by traditional warfare or technology, functioned according to principles derived from the planet's fundamental nature, obtaining energy from its natural systems. The coalition's actions were precisely retaliated against, as if the entity had foreseen their tactics. The coalition's enormous vessels, which were armed with weaponry and shields that could destroy moons, started to weaken, and the fleet unleashed a variety of super weapons, each intended to disrupt or neutralize the Guardian's unwavering energy. destroy planetary defenses, such as tectonic plate instability, causing gravitational disruptors, drones tailored for precise strikes, and energy cannons intended to obliterate large regions. Yet none of these demonstrated efficacy by absorbing the impacts and rerouting their energy into the planet's defensive system. Every attempt by the coalition forces to overpower the Guardian was greeted with disastrous results. Increasing failures, the entity used the natural resources of Earth to launch counterattacks, large storms that suddenly erupted, and lightning strikes that targeted important ships in the oceans rose in ground operations. Seismic activity appeared to be consumed by coordinated surges that created tsunamis. The Guardians' activities, which divided the Earth beneath coalition bases and engulfed entire units, they weren't random. Rather, they were planned to methodically destroy the coalition's offensive capabilities. Unprepared for this kind of opposition, the coalition started to lose unity. The electromagnetic fields produced by the Guardian advanced hampered the communication between ships and ground forces. When devices intended for smooth coordination malfunctioned, commanders were left alone and found it difficult to adjust. Their troops' morale fell when they discovered they were up against a force that wasn't conventional but functioned completely differently. In the midst of the chaos, the coalition aimed to exploit possible weaknesses. Scientists and strategists put in countless hours to examine the Guardians' behavior, looking for trends that would indicate a weakness, but their efforts were not very successful in getting the Guardians' answers. Were too flexible and powerfully entwined with the Earth. Even the coalition's activities could not be reliably predicted by the most sophisticated artificial intelligence systems. The Galactic Empire's attempts to engage their wider allies were as unsuccessful. As they witnessed the difficulties of their coalition, were hesitant to allocate more funds to them. They reluctantly departed the coalition since the battle with Earth's Guardian was turning into an expensive and hopeless endeavor. Becoming more and more alone as they battle not only their Guardian but also the growing awareness of their impending failure. The coalition persisted despite the growing losses, motivated by a mix of hubris and desperation. They thought that the Guardian's defenses may eventually be worn down by sheer numbers and unrelenting aggression. Belief turned out to be incorrect, as the Guardian, fed by the planet's resources, demonstrated no indications of exhaustion or depletion, and each assault simply served to bolster its determination, as if the entity was growing and changing with each interaction. And the coalition's most significant deployment marked the turning point. Specialized troops of elite warriors prepared for planetary assaults against advanced civilizations. These forces are armed with experimental weapons and backed by the entire firepower of the surviving fleet. Launched a concerted attack on the Guardian's headquarters with the goal of being a decisive last push to regain authority. Instead, the Guardian's countermeasures were, despite their advanced training, the elite units were swift and overwhelming. Within seconds of encountering the entity, the equipment's armor and weaponry stopped working, failed, and their plans fell apart as a result of an adversary who changed their tactics more quickly than they could respond. No survivors were left to report this because the Guardian's response was so comprehensive. The coalition's residual confidence was destroyed by a definitive failure, and their already overburdened fleet started to ships fled their places in chaos, putting survival first. Commanders of the operation, who had previously maintained their faith in victory, had to face the fact that they were succeeded, and the coalition's unity disintegrated as each group tried to keep its own troops on Earth. And its Guardian unopposed, as the Guardian did not pursue them when the coalition left. Actions were motivated solely by preserving Earth's natural resources, not by retaliation or conquest. Under the Guardian's guidance, systems that had been stretched to their breaking point throughout the battle started to stabilize. The planet returned to an unsettling stillness when the storms passed and the seismic activity stopped. The battle served as a clear reminder of the coalition's arrogance, which they had written off as a sign of a primitive planet, showed itself to be a stronghold of tenacity, its protector, and an unmatched natural power that prevented the coalition from succeeding. Challenged the Galactic Empire's presumptions about supremacy and power, leaving a lasting impression. Once thought to be unimportant, it had evolved into a symbol of defiance, its Guardian, and a mythology that would reverberate throughout the stars. In addition to being a tactical setback, the coalition's defeat marked a significant change in their conception of the cosmos. Had come upon a power that functioned outside of their expertise, reminding them of the limitations of the Guardian's technological prowess and conceit about their aspirations for Earth. The fact that the war was over was not just a sign of survival but also of the planet's enduring might. However, The Coalition's shortcomings compelled its leaders to acknowledge that the Guardians' legacy and defiance had only just begun. Despite the massive losses and the breakdown of their fleet's unity, they went into a desperate maneuver. The commanders, being fully aware of the Guardians' strength, refused to accept defeat, consented to the use of their ultimate weapon, a machine designed to destroy entire worlds. The result of millennia of scientific progress was rarely utilized and had always served its intended purpose. It was easy to fully remove the target, leaving no evidence of resistance, hence the choice to turn on the using such a destructive force so near their own fleets posed a serious risk of collateral damage. But the Coalition had gone too far. Their dominance and reputation throughout the galaxy were on the if Earth and its Guardian were not subdued, the Empire's authority would be weakened, leaving them open to rebellion and decline within their own borders. As the Coalition prepared, the armament fleet turned its attention to safeguarding its deployment procedure, which included erecting a wall around the enormous 8 command centers and communications hubs were routinely interrupted. The entity's blows were accurate, reducing needless damage as it became more fractured, while Maxim, the Coalition's weapon, continued to charge its energy levels, indicating the impact on the Coalition's capabilities. Reaching disastrous heights, although this procedure wasn't without repercussions, the activation of the weapon started to cause gravitational anomalies in the surrounding area of space to become unstable, seemed to be posing unpredictable risks to the remaining fleet ships to hold their positions, while a number of smaller ships were sunk in the tumultuous surroundings. The Coalition persisted in believing that the deployment of weapons was their only option in spite of these difficulties. To victory, the Guardian's actions got more calculated as it realized the weapon was there, refocused its efforts to eliminate the current threat to the entity's capacity for adaptation and planning, became increasingly more obvious as it took advantage of the Coalition's weaknesses. By using the planets, the Guardian directly attacked the weapon protective perimeter using resources and energy. In order to safeguard their ultimate weapon, the Coalition threw everything they had into the warships, and men were given up to purchase time, resulting in a violent and disorderly battle between the Guardian. Despite the opposition, it persisted in moving forward because of its link to the planet, which enabled it to survive. Despite, in contrast, as the battle's intensity increased, the Coalition's soldiers were, as the weapon got closer to full power, they were quickly exhausting their resources and losing their capacity to stay together. When the Guardian's attack reached a critical point, the weapon's defensive perimeter started to deteriorate. Troops were redirected to a gadget that needed time to charge before firing, safeguard the region, and strengthen defensive measures to stop the Guardian from interfering. The remaining commanders came up with a plan to divert the Guardian's focus from the weapon by sending their forces into a string of deceptive strikes, and the Guardian changed its course of action after noticing the increase. As a result, it stopped concentrating just on thwarting imminent threats, and instead it started attacking important infrastructural elements of the Coalition, destroying their capacity to function efficiently. The Coalition's supply routes. The Guardian's activities resulted in the destruction of important structures and the retreat of the Coalition's surviving troops. Unwaveringly motivated by the necessity to eliminate the weapon's existential threat, in a final act of the leaders of the Coalition chose to activate the weapon too soon out of desperation. There were significant risks associated with this decision, which was made in the heat of the moment. Despite these risks, systems were not completely stabilized, and the possibility of catastrophic failure loomed high. The activation process started a chain reaction since the Coalition was prepared to risk everything for a chance at victory. The weapon's internal response releases a tremendous energy surge. Designed to destroy the Earth started to go out of control. The Guardian, using all of the planet's energy reserves, the entity launched a decisive strike after realizing the imminence of danger, directed a concentrated attack on the weapon's core, and the ensuing conflict between the armies produced an extraordinary magnitude. The Guardian's strike destabilized the weapon's energy, and it exploded in a devastating explosion that destroyed everything in its path as it radiated over the battlefield. The fleet's shock wave destroyed already weakened Coalition ships. Despite being greatly affected by the demise of a once dominant galactic power symbol, the Guardian explosion persisted, allowing it to absorb the energy through its link to the planet, and diverted the weapon to stabilize Earth's natural systems. In addition to the Alliance's aspirations of winning were dashed, and their hubris cost them everything, leaving the empires in ruins. However, the Cole-Eon's gamble had failed miserably, and their ultimate weapon was the remains of its failure. The Guardian's capacity to defeat their most powerful technology has been used against them as a symbol of their technical superiority. Their power limitations were exposed by advanced efforts. What they had thought would be a simple conquest had become a warning about the repercussions of underestimating the unknown. The weapon's destruction signaled the end of demoralized and dispersed. The Coalition's remaining forces withdrew from Earth's orbit. Observing from a distance, the Galactic Empires noted the terrible effects Earth Guardian had not only protected the Earth but had also destroyed the Coalition's sense of invincibility. Sustained for decades, this failure would reverberate throughout the galaxy, shifting the power dynamics and compelling empires to reevaluate their plans for Earth's annihilation. The Guardian's weapon was more than just a triumph, it was a declaration. Activities had shown how resilient the planet was and how pointless it was to try to control it. The Coalition's defeat served as both a military setback and a sobering reminder of its limitations. Nevertheless, Earth Guardian started the task of repairing the planet's equilibrium after the war. The Coalition's weapon, which had before been a sign of destruction, would eventually mend deeply. The battle had finished due to the strength of a force originating on the planet, but its effects would be felt throughout the galaxy. The lesson for generations was that the Earth was clear and its guardians were not to be undervalued regardless of how strong or sophisticated the danger is. The Coalition's their campaign came to an end with their retreat, leaving Earth to recuperate from the destruction the Guardian had caused. As the immediate threat had passed, it achieved its goal and started the process of stabilizing the planet. The war had a significant impact on both Earth and the wider galaxy, and the Guardian's efforts had not only guaranteed Earth's existence, but it had also reinterpreted its role in the cosmos. Earth's governments had seen the rebuilding. The damage inflicted by the Coalition's invasion was a monumental effort for Guardian's power. Left ecosystems disturbed and towns in ruins, but the Guardian's intervention had avoided total. The planet's natural systems are supported by the destruction, which preserves the essential components required for recovery. At a rate that was unexpected, the Guardian's influence started to mend. This regeneration acted as a reminder of the planet's function as a guardian for humanity, and the Guardian's relationship with its presence evoked wonder, and reflection. Its activation had revealed a long-buried and forgotten, showing that the history of Earth was far more complicated than archaeologists and historians had previously thought. Diligently investigate the ruins and interpret the traces of the ancient civilization that had produced the Guardian. The knowledge that this society had foreseen dangers from space aroused concerns regarding the readiness and tenacity of humanity. The Guardian's acts also caused a change in humanity's viewpoint, which had previously been centered on internal strife and separation. Now that Earth had confronted and overcome the galactic power, there was a feeling of cohesion and purpose. Gaining victory strengthened everyone's resolve to save the Earth and its riches, included tackling the social and environmental issues that had afflicted humanity for many generations on a worldwide scale. To coordinate efforts toward reconstruction and readiness for possible future threats, nations formed alliances. These partnerships went beyond national boundaries, putting the welfare of the world ahead of the Guardian's own personal interests. Function as a catalyst for unity emerged as a major concept in this new era, signifying the strength of the collective action and the significance of protecting Earth's legacy. The conflict's effects were felt outside of Earth. Rapidly spreading throughout the galaxy, news of the Coalition's failure rocked the foundations of the empires that had once regarded as an unstoppable force. The Coalition was now stigmatized as failure. This defeat not only made it harder for them to control their lands, but it also gave other civilizations the confidence to. Rebellions against their authority broke out throughout the Coalition's territory, driven by the realization that even the galactic empires were compelled to reconsider their tactics after their most potent weaponry failed against the Guardian. And priorities, it became evident from Earth's defense that technological supremacy by itself was insufficient to ensure domination. The Guardian's presence added a new variable that was impossible to measure or manage, and this insight led to a change in the way empires handled their diplomatic efforts for expansion, and contacts with other civilizations started to take the place of violent conquests as empires attempted to save Earth from suffering another devastating setback. Disregarded as unimportant, it became the center of galactic attention. Some civilizations treated it with respect, acknowledging the Guardian as a power beyond their ability to understand. Cautiously approached so as not to incite another conflict for Earth, this new status offered both. The planet's leaders faced both chances and difficulties as they navigated a role of galactic importance. Intricate connections with societies that were far more developed than their own. The Guardian's presence acted as both a deterrent and a reminder of the accountability that accompanied its authority. Humanity had demonstrated its ability to bounce back, but it was obvious that taking good care of the Earth and its resources was necessary to keep this position. Despite being asleep, the Guardian's activities had preserved Earth's survival, but its designers provided no guidelines or justifications for its use beyond protection. Therefore, this question remains stimulated continued investigation and discussion, with academics and scientists examining the consequences of the Guardian's presence. These questions highlighted whether it was intended to be a permanent safeguard or if its activation had been a one-time event. The attempts made by humanity to get a deeper understanding of both its own past and the heritage of the previous civilization in the Earth changed in the years after the battle, and the invasion scars, which were still evident, became monuments representing resiliency and rebirth, were built to honor the lives lost and the solidarity that had arose in the face of insurmountable circumstances. And the Guardian's contribution to this triumph became a key storyline, motivating generations to appreciate the Earth and its resources through worldwide scientific. As humanity attempted to expand on the knowledge made available by the Guardian's activation, progress sped up. Advanced technologies, environmental restoration, and sustainable energy research blossomed thanks to the realizing that preserving equilibrium with Earth's natural systems was essential to its survival. The Guardians as an illustration of how to use the planet's resources without exhausting them. This new era of the loss of the coalition also altered the larger galactic community, with the empires being humiliated by their failure started implementing more cooperative governance and exploration strategies. And partnerships were established to discuss common issues like interstellar trade and resource shortages. Despite its somewhat outdated technology, Earth emerged as a valuable collaborator in these endeavors, providing a distinct viewpoint influenced by the Guardian's deeds, even if the prospect of another invasion was still far off. The coalition's failure was a stark warning to everybody who would be affected by the conflict, and the lessons learned served as a deterrent. Even in Dorsey, the Guardian's presence made sure that Earth wouldn't be threatened. Undervalued once more, this new reality freed humanity to concentrate on reconstruction and future planning without the ongoing apprehension about outside dangers. As time went on, the conflict's memory transformed into legends of the Protector, and its protection of Earth became a part of the planet's cultural heritage, honored in literature, art, and the Guardian's protective function in education was not merely a historical fact, it was also a symbol. This legacy served as a reminder of the potential of humanity when united, and the need of protecting the planet and the obligations that accompanied its special place in the galaxy. The war was over, but the Guardian's actions had ensured not just the planet's survival but also the future of Earth for future generations, but also its position within the wider, more intricate universe that humanity is now aware of. Despite its own limitations and potential, it approached the upcoming difficulties with a reinvigorated feeling of purpose. The Guardian remained silent and continued to stand as a reminder of Earth's tenacity and a monument to how resilient a planet and its inhabitants can be when challenged to their boundaries.